I'd like to welcome everybody, thank all of our esteemed guests. We have a great turnout tonight. Thank you for all coming. We are trying to do this in accordance with public health principles. And so if you're not eating or you're not seated at the table, please put your mask on if you're going to the bathroom, for example. Everybody here is vaccinated. We can discuss what that means, but what it basically means is that even if one of you has COVID, the chance of you spreading it to the rest of us is much lower and very low chance of us getting sick, so thank you very much. The first speaker for this evening to say a few words is our esteemed leader, Dr. O'Byrne. So Dr. O'Byrne.
This is really a joy to be here with real people, having a chance to engage, to catch up, to gossip, find out what's really going on in the world. It's wonderful, wonderful to be here. And thank you, Dr. Crowther, Annette, all the team that have pulled this together. This has been a challenging year and a half for all of us. I think that we are approaching the end of a very long and weary journey. And it's events like this that give at least me hope that in fact the end is indeed in sight. But it does give me the opportunity tonight to say how much and I know all of the individuals at McMaster and our faculty really do appreciate the immense effort that you have all contributed to making us get through this last 18 or 19 months with such success. I know many of you have been actually on the front lines, taking care of patients in the COVID ward and the intensive care units. I know many of you have been in the vaccination clinics, taking care of the thousands and thousands of people who chose to be vaccinated. And I know that we've had an extraordinarily successful year through this very challenging time, particularly related to the research that's been going on and the educational efforts that have ensured that our students have not been too disadvantaged by the delays and by all of the negativity that's related to the pandemic. We graduated a class this year, which is a medical school class. We entered a new medical school class this year. All of those were in doubt at one time. We didn't know whether we could actually get our students out into the world because of the limitations placed on us by the pandemic. The research piece has been extraordinary, and it's been, again, largely driven by this department. We've had immense success even with the challenging time. We've had the identification of a new clinical entity called VIT. We have the colleagues here tonight who figured out why it occurs. There's Dr. Arnold, Isaac Nazi, and my good friend and colleague, John Kelton. And not only that, but actually figured out how to treat it. So all of this in an 18-month time span. We've had people in medicine and in other departments in the faculty who have developed new ways of giving vaccines. We have an inhaled vaccine currently under study that was developed here at McMaster. It's more than $60 million of new funding coming through the university, most of it health sciences, and most of that from Department of Medicine. The year ahead is going to be something to look forward to. I think it'll be very different. It's something that I think we are all hoping will move in the way it should. But despite how it goes, no matter how much more challenge we have, or how much more optimistic we feel about the developments over the next year, this department will continue to thrive. It is, without any doubt, the strongest department of medicine in this country. It has fantastic leadership. Dr. Crowther and all of the division heads and all of the academic leads that are here in the room tonight. It's going to continue to be an amazing place to work. It's been an immense privilege for me to spend my entire career pretty well in this Department of Medicine. And I hope that this event tonight is just the harbinger of a lot of very good things to come. We're over the hump, I hope, and we're on the downslope. So let's keep going. And Mark, congratulations to you and all the success you've achieved, but keep it up. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Paul. Very kind words. And I think hopefully this is a door opening. We did hold a retreat last week and we had 24 people at it. It was very successful. I was informed afterwards by the university that I did not do the correct paperwork. So I will talk to the dean about paperwork at some point. The dean's office did ask me to do some paperwork for tonight. And I said, this isn't an official university event. So I didn't do the paperwork. So if the dean gets me in trouble later, don't tell him. A couple of special mentions to start off. So we have members of the Walsh family, Dr. Walsh's family in the back here, who go by other names at some times. And Dr. Hirsch and his people are here at this table. Jack will be saying a few words a bit later. Some of you will remember Alice Bradbury, who was involved in administration for many, many years, and I haven't seen in 20 years, so welcome. We've had a number of retirements in the department. In fact, there's a long list of retirements, but I'm just going to mention a few because there's an awful lot of retirements which were kind of precipitated by COVID, but the most recent ones are Lawrence Hart, Luke Jansen, Alf Cividino, and Rick Adachi, both of whom are here tonight, and Rick will be doing a presentation. Jim Gibson retired after many, many years, although not this year, but within the span of COVID, he retired. And there's been a whole series of other retirements. The department has had a major turnover over the last 18 months. We've had a number of department members who've died over the last 18 months or so. And Dr. Elaine Gordon, many of you will know, worked at McMaster for decades. Dr. Clive Kieran, who also worked at McMaster for decades. Dr. Ray Naden, who was here and did maternal fetal medicine and went back to New Zealand, passed away. And Dr. Ronald Bain died earlier this year. So it's been a time of huge transformation and transition. The other thing that there's a lot of new members of the department here. So despite COVID, we've been extraordinarily successful at recruitments, lots of recruitments. And also, some of you may know that we've been doing some trading and we acquired a whole team of people from the McMaster Immunology Research Center. So Dr. Bramson, Dr. Rouleau are here, which was a great, I think, advance for the Department of Medicine to bring on a whole bunch of highly, highly successful basic scientists, particularly and fortuitously, many of whom are doing really outstanding world-leading research in COVID, and it's been a huge benefit to us in the department to have an additional group of non-clinical scientists who are able to really advance our research agenda. The first official presentation for the night is the William Walsh Award for Outstanding Educational Achievement, and the winner of that award is Dr. Jonathon Sherbino, and I'll ask Jonathon to come forward. And as Jonathan's coming up, I'll also ask Dr. Chan to come up because Dr. Chan, after I give Jonathon the award, is going to do a few brief words of introduction, and then Jonathon assures me his presentation will be brief. But I'm not rushing him or anything, so.
I have the awesome opportunity of saying embarrassing things first as the warm-up act for Dr. Sherbino's speech. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Teresa Chan. I'm an associate professor within the Department of Medicine. I am an emerge doc by night, and by day I am the associate dean of CPD. And I would like to think that I'm up here because I've known Jonathon for a long time. I've known him since he had braces. But that wasn't very long ago. It was only about 5 years ago when he had dental surgery. So no, just kidding. But actually, I've known him since the Welcome Barbecue when I landed here as an emergency medicine resident. And someone said, "Oh, you're interested in med ed? You should go talk to that guy." And they pointed at this one. And I was pretty intimidated at first because he seemed really smart and he seemed to know what he's talking about. And so it took me about 9 months before I drummed up the courage to email him. And he sat me down and he said, "So education is a wide field. You can do a lot of different things." And he said, "You could be a teacher, you could be a scholar, you could be a researcher, you could be a clinician educator. But, most people need to, try to figure out what you want. Do you have any sense of what you want to do?" And so I turned to him and I said, "I think I want to do it all." And he was like, "I'm not sure that, well, we see what we can do." But it's because of his amazing sponsorship and mentorship that I've been proving him sort of wrong for the last little while. But it's only because of his support and his building up of what McMaster always had a legacy of amazing medical education work. And Jonathon's in that legacy, but has extended it even further. McMaster was founded on principles of really exciting new models of education. And it is under leaders like Jonathon that we've been able to continue to excel in that area and continue to break ground in medical education and just change the world. So without further ado, I will finish my warm-up act and give Jonathon Sherbino his stage.
I want to begin with some thanks. Thanks to the department and to my colleagues, many of who are here, to my mentors and to my to the students that really have informed my career. I'm not a really big person for awards. I kind of prefer to take delight in the success of the completion of a project. And probably until this moment, my favorite award is a black and white frame photo of when I was chairing the specialty committee in emergency medicine, and we completed a 3-year-long project to completely revolutionize our curriculum from across the country. That picture will now be replaced by this award. And this award really has pushed me back on my heels a bit. William Walsh and his family, and Alan and Wes and Kim, they've all had a profound impact on healthcare in Hamilton, academia at McMaster, and influence on medical education across the country. We probably still don't really have an understanding about that impact. And so to be recognized by an award that's in memoriam to William Walsh is really a profound milestone for me and for the academic journey that I've followed. It gives me an opportunity to pause from the daily grind that all of us find ourselves in academic medicine and to reflect on how you arrived here. And it's not been a straight or intentional or planned journey, but one that's been quite circuitous. I didn't have a master plan when I started academic medicine. I entered with curiosity and a desire, maybe a very small desire, to make a small dent in the universe for the good. And it's because of the collaborations and the opportunity I've had to work with people, I can say that I'm really proud of the work that I've done with others. Serendipity is probably the best description of how I find myself here. I'm not someone who believes in 5 or 10 or 20-year plans, even though I do a lot of strategic planning on the side, because I think our lives and the complexity of our health systems, they're just not amenable to that kind of prediction. But I don't mean randomness or pure luck. And let me just for a second take a sense to say that I appreciate the privilege that I have that has allowed me to move to where I am, and that I have colleagues that have not had that same privilege, that have had to go around barriers, to climb over walls, and to push and barge and break down obstacles on their way to success. And so that's also forefront in my mind as well. And so I think we need to also recognize those types of contributions that go far above, because we have no understanding of what's underneath all the actions they took to achieve. But when I mean serendipity, I really talk about curiosity, an appetite to innovate and to push against the grain. And so I fell into medical education late in my residency at the University of Toronto. Early on, I had the good fortune of being a co-investigator on a CIHR grant, a New England publication. And that plan for me in academic medicine didn't seem the right fit. My work in pre-hospital research wasn't working for me. And I was starting to question, was academic medicine right for me? And that's when I discovered education. And graduate training there allowed me to move in a way that has given me great fulfillment as a medical educator and as a clinician. When I arrived at McMaster in 2006, it was again serendipity. It was really a negotiation with my family. I wanted to move to Ottawa, where all the national medical education organizations exist. They said too far. They wanted to move to Western, and I said too close to the in-laws. And so we looked at the map and said, we'll settle at Hamilton and McMaster, even though I'd probably never slept a day here and had visited the campus probably for a couple of hours. But the experience I've had here has meant I probably will never leave, even though, I have people reaching out and say, would you consider this or that? There is a sense of being able to make that small dent in the universe with friends and colleagues and collaborators here that's unique. So that idea of serendipity brings connections. And so early on in my career, from grad school led to opportunities to work at the Royal College and subsequently to work on CanMeds. More than a decade ago was that work that we had in terms of revitalizing the framework. And it feels like a tarnished, dusty idea because we're so familiar with it as Canadians. But when I travel internationally and when I talk to people, this framework of how we organize and think about our medical education systems is profoundly influential, used in more than 45 jurisdictions around the world. And if you buy me a drink, and they're free, so it's not hard to do, I can even tell you the story about how the Americans, the ACGME, stole canned meds and will never admit it. So, our influence as a tiny community of medical educators, tiny in numbers here at McMaster and across the country, is still very influential in Canada and around the world. And so if you fast forward to over the course of the 15 years that I've been here now, I find myself at the next phase in my career serving as a leader for the MERIT group, the McMaster Education Research Innovation and Theory Program. And as Assistant Dean, I have this great privilege to work with scientists and scholars to stand on the shoulders of giants, the research that we've performed, to engage and collaborate with really intelligent people with programs of research that I think is changing health professions education, and to interact with grad students, imagining who I was 15, 16 years ago, and understand that we're really in good hands. That generation that's changing the world, making that dent in the universe, they're accelerating and innovating and producing scholarship at a pace that's really phenomenal. I've benefited a lot from being a medical educator. It's sustained me in my work as an emergency physician. You need something when you're working a lot of nights and weekends. But for all the successes in publications and in research grants I've had as an education researcher, my best moments in education happen at the bedside. It's teaching a medicine resident or a medical student and to make space for them to learn. And it brings me back to those opportunities, the generosity of the mentors that made space to allow me to learn as well. So before I conclude, and I've probably gone farther than Mark went with time, don't let me lend with that illusion that I have education all figured out, or that because I have this award in memory of a great medical educator that I even have even the smallest things figured out. And the anecdote really comes from my middle daughter of 3. I've coached about 17 seasons of different team sports, and thank God I'm almost done, because they get to a certain age and they realize I'm not very good. And after one soccer practice, my daughter in the car ride home said, "You know, everyone tells me you're this great educator, this great teacher." I was like, okay. Well, you're a really terrible coach. I don't think I learned anything at that practice. So with that, thank you.
One of the things we probably didn't miss during the plague was long, drawn-out dinners that last until 11 o'clock at night, so we're going to try and not do that tonight. Great to see everybody and be here, and thanks to the people from LIUNA Station for putting on dinner and doing it in a way that's safe. Dr. Yeshka showed up late and didn't bring his vaccination certificate, and I had to actually go out and actually swear on some kind of appropriate religious device that, in fact, he was vaccinated, but I know he was because he and I have had lots of discussions about that. One of the things that we missed during COVID, amongst many things, was that last year's dinner was done electronically. And so both Dr. O'Byrne, who won the Jack Hirsch Award last year, and Dr. Yeshka, who won the Walsh Award last year, are here. I'm not going to ask them to come up because we did actually track them down and give them an award last year, but we should probably give them a hand for their success last year that was not otherwise acknowledged. We're going to move on to the certificate presentation. We have a lot of people who are here, but we also have a lot of people who aren't here. So I'm going to run down a whole list of names, and then the people that I know are here or who I see, I'll ask them to come up to get their certificates. This is what we're calling key role recognition, people who stepped down within the last year or became new roles. People who stepped off the AFP Financial Management Committee. We underestimate, or you may not have heard of this committee. It's super important for the functioning of the department. And more importantly, as we move potentially towards a fully converted AFP, this committee will become even more important. So Dr. Karen Toe stepped off that committee. Dr. Barry Lum, as we all know, stepped down as physician-in-chief at HHS, not this year, but last year, although time does fly. And we did acknowledge him beforehand, but he gets 2 leaving role certificates, one as a member of the AFP executive and also a member of the Tenure and Promotion Committee. Dr. Panju was a member of the Tenure and Promotion Committee and was acknowledged for stepping down from the role of Division Director of Internal Medicine last year. And Dr. Ingram, who's not here, stepped down as a member of the AFP Executive Committee and a member of the Tenure and Promotion Committee, and also stepped down as Physician-in-Chief at St. Joseph's Healthcare on July 1st of this year, and was succeeded by Dr. Madeline Verhovsek, who's over on that side. So congratulations to Alistair on surviving. And congratulations on Madeline to being sufficiently head injured to take on this job. It's quite a responsibility to become the physician-in-chief, and it has a lot of issues, but I'm sure that Madeline will do a wonderful job in the same way that Khaled is doing a wonderful job in replacing Barry. So if I could ask Barry and Akbar to come up, I will give you your certificates and get pictures. Come on up. Now, we probably shouldn't shake. I don't know what we'll do. We'll do some kind of fist bump thing in honor of whatever year it is. Yeah. Sherbino's young enough. Barry? And then one of the most important roles we have in the Department of Medicine is as division director. And over the last year, we've had a number of transitions in terms of division directors. So Dr. Cividino stepped down. I'll ask him to come up in a second as the division director of rheumatology. We'll clap for these. They're big jobs. And people who aren't here, Dr. Sharon Marr stepped down as the division director of geriatric medicine. Dr. Mark Loeb as division director of infectious diseases. Dr. Hermenio Lima as division director of dermatology. And Dr. Raj Hanmaya stepped down as the director of the general internal medicine residency training program after taking it essentially from its beginnings to a very successful program which has achieved Canadian recognition. And then Dr. Laurie Whitehead, as you all know, on September the 1st, stepped down as the internal medicine residency program director, which is a huge job, critically important for the success of the department, and was succeeded by Dr. Leslie Martin, who is not here tonight. So of that list of people, the only person who's here is Alf, so I'll ask Alf to come up to get his recognition. Other successes that we've had, these are mentions only, so no certificate, but the success of the Department of Medicine is in part contingent on endowed chairs. I think we now have 48 endowed chairs in the Department of Medicine. Dr. Kelton, when he was chair of the department, I think welcomed the first. Is that fair to say? And so under Dr. Kelton and Dr. O'Byrne's leadership, we accelerated our pace of acquiring endowed chairs. We have vastly more than anybody else does. And as a result of having so many and so many outstanding researchers and clinicians, we have a fair bit of turnover in endowed chairs. So there's John Neary became the Boris Chair in Education and Internal Medicine last year, replacing Dr. Panju. Dr. Jim Duquetis, who's over here with Dr. Verhovsek, attained the David Braley and Nancy Gordon Chair in Thromboembolic Diseases, which was vacated by Dr. Jeff Ginsburg. Jeff Werstuck, who's one of our basic scientists, is now the inaugural chairholder of the ISTH McMaster Chair in Thrombosis and Hemostasis. Dr. Shamir Mehta was announced last week as the inaugural chairholder of the Douglas Holder PHRI Chair in Interventional Cardiology. And thank you to Dr. Youssef, who's here, for his support, without which the chair would not have occurred. Patricia Liao has the Jack Hirsch Professorship in thrombosis. Dr. Kiran had passed that to Dr. Liao when he passed away. And then Dr. Joy St. Ange, who replaced Dr. Sharon Marr as the Division Director of Geriatrics, has achieved the St. Peter's McMaster Chair in Aging. So of those people, Jim's here. Maybe Jim could just stand up and be recognized for getting his endowed chair. And then in terms of promotions, we had 3 people last year who were promoted to full professor, all of whom are here. So I'll ask all 3 people to come up, and I'll give the certificates in sequence. So Dr. Catherine Demers, if you come forward, Catherine. And then while Catherine's coming up, Dr. Maggie Larche, over there somewhere. And Dr. Arnold. Come on up, Donnie. As you heard earlier, Donnie and his group set a record in having Nature publication and a Nature Medicine publication, I think, within the last few months. So impressive track record. And also congratulations to Dr. Nazi, who was critical to the success of that. In terms of associate professors, and of course, Dr. Kelton underwrote the whole thing. Associate professors, many promotions to associate professor: Dr. Ahmed Attar, Dr. Daniel Brandt Vegas, Dr. Jason Chung, Dr. Betty Chu, Dr. Kirsten DeWitt, who's since left for Kingston, Dr. Paul Kim, Dr. Arthur Lau, Dr. Daryl Leong, Dr. Suresh Menon, Dr. Simon Ochkovsky, who was going to be here but is not here, some excuse about childcare or something. Dr. Kanji Pereira, Dr. Bram Roshberg, who is here. So Bram, I'll ask you to come up in a second. Dr. Ashkan Shomanish, Dr. Anjali Shroff, Dr. Jennifer Sang, Dr. Michael Sang, Dr. Mohammed Yagubi, Dr. Mickey Zeller, and Dr. Deborah Siegel, who's since left for Ottawa. So Dr. Zeller and Roshberg, come on up. And I'm going to ask Dr. Legault to come up to take Simon's. And then Dr. John Yu, who was working at Hamilton General, has since left to work in Oakville, has been promoted to clinical professor. So congratulations, that's a rare honor. Teaching awards, we have certificates for a couple of these. So I'll go through all the names of the people who won them, and then I'll ask the people who are here to come forward for their awards. Dr. Alex Hines won the Graduate Education Award. Last year's award was to Dr. Peter Gross. This year, from postgraduate education, was Dr. Jim Salas. Last year, Dr. Christine Rubik and Dr. Nader Khalidi. Dr. Helen Neighbor won the Undergraduate Education Award, and last year it was Dr. Jill Rudkowski. And I will just call out that Jill and Helen have done an immense amount of work over the last 18 months to keep the undergraduate program running. There's been just absolutely unbelievable amounts of work trying to keep that organization up and going. And one of the great lines that was delivered to hospital administration was delivered, I think, by Helen at a meeting I was at, where one of the hospital administrators said, "So what would happen if we kept the medical students out of the hospital for another week?" And it probably was Helen, but it was somebody who said, "You will have no interns or PGY1s starting on July the 1st. And that was actually, I think, the key sort of message that led to them not being run out of the hospital a second time, because even got through to hospital administration, that if you block these people, they won't meet their requirements for graduating. And as a result of that, we'll have no PGY1s, which would be a complete disaster. So I think we have one certificate for Dr. Hines. Dr. Hines? Is it Dr. Hines? So if you haven't heard Dr. Hines speak, he works in bacteriophages. And if you have no idea what those are, you really should listen to him speak, because it is very, very interesting and something that's really innovative and cool, and actually explains an awful lot of stuff. And he's sitting with the people who are interested in GI diseases. And a lot of the GI diseases, actually, the reason that they wax and wane is because of bacteriophages. So if you want to talk to somebody who knows about it or listen to a great, he's also a very entertaining speaker who is really very good at this. Career awards, we have, as you know, the department gives out a large number of career awards. William Watson Buchanan Clinician Educator Award went to Dr. Serena Gundy, who's not here. Last year's award was Dr. Jill Rudkowski. The AFP Clinician Educator Award was Dr. Seychelle Johanna, who's with us, and I'll ask her to come up in a second. Last year's award was Dr. Nathan Hambley. The E.J. Moran Campbell Internal Career Research Award was Dr. Imran Sacha, who is here, and I'll ask him to come up. And last year was Dr. Emily Bellacote. The AFP Internal Career Research Award was Dr. Jorge Wong, and last year was Dr. Marie Pigier. The Medicine Internal Career Research Award was Dr. Anthony Rulo, who is here, so I'll ask him to come up in a second. And last year's award winner was Dr. Kenjana, Dr. Pereira. How do you pronounce Kenjana? The Medicine Internal Career Research Award, Dr. Terrence Ho, who is here. Last year's award was Dr. Flavia Borges. The Mid-Career Research Award, which is a new award we put on within the last couple of years, Dr. Paul Kim. Last year's award went to Dr. Mike Walsh. We have a second Mid-Career Research Award, which went to Dr. Jennifer Sang. Last year's award was Dr. Jill Rudkowski. And then the Clive Kieran Mid-Career Award, which was a new award this year, went to Dr. Waleed Al-Hazani. So I think Dr. Johanna, Dr. Sacha, Dr. Rulo, and Dr. Ho are here, if I can ask them to come forward. as I said earlier, I think we've all been aware of the fact that there's been this problem with COVID-19, and we've got many members of the department who have put in an immense amount of time and a lot of effort looking after patients with COVID and doing some really heroic things. So I'd like to acknowledge all those people, particularly the ICU emergency department people and the internal medicine service who've borne a lot of that brunt. And then the other group of people who I always find are forgotten in all this is our residents. And the residents are the oil that makes the machine turn. And I was at a ridiculous meeting with the administration of the university where they said they do not want any learners exposed to COVID-19. And I said, you need to back that statement up. And they said, what do you mean? I said, well, I can guarantee you that every single patient admitted with COVID-19 to our hospitals is seen or cared for by one or more learner of McMaster University, which is our residents. And so our residents have really, really borne a huge burden over the last 18 months, helping us to deal with COVID through shifts and moving around hospitals and doing extra shifts and covering for each other, and just an immense amount of work. And we have a couple of residents here. So I'd like to just acknowledge our resident staff for just a truly heroic job. And on that note, we also had 2 highly successful resident research days during the course of COVID-19, and thanks to Laurie for running both of those. And one of the award winners from that is here, so I'll ask Kate Lovett, who's over there, to stand up, who received first place for the clinical poster in this year's resident research competition. So Kate. All right, now we'll move on to the final award for the evening. And so this is the department's senior award, the Jack Hirsch Award, and I'm very pleased that Jack is here. And so the award winner this year is Dr. Rick Adachi. So I'll ask Rick to come up. We'll present the award. And I'll ask Jack to actually come up and say a few words about the award, and then he'll introduce the introducer.
I think this is the 16th year of the awards dinner, and I've attended all but 2. I thought that the awards dinner was started by John Kelton, but I spoke to the people at the table. It was actually our dean, Paul O'Byrne, who started the awards dinner. They've all been great occasions. And where's Mark? Mark always does a great job. He contracts 5 hours down into about 2.5, and that's a real talent. I'm glad you do that, Mark. But this is about Rick. Rick, I'm delighted. I've known Rick for decades and decades, ever since you were a resident. I think I might have been chairman when you were recruited. Yeah, and he's always struck me as a very pleasant, smiling, collegial person, a really nice guy. And I also heard from others that he's an outstanding clinician. And about 3 days ago, I received his CV, and I now realize that you've done a wonderful job as a researcher. Really impressive CV, and I'm delighted that you got this award. You do credit to the award, so congratulations. Can I do this?
To introduce Dr. Adachi, I'll ask Dr. Papiano to come up.
So thanks, Mark, and congratulations, Rick, and Karen Adachi, who's sitting at the table. It's a wonderful honor to, as a mentee, to congratulate your mentor. Rick, for those of you who are not aware, has been involved and published in every major osteoporosis drug in the past 25 to 30 years, including New England Journal publications, Lancet, etc. As his mentee, I had the honor of going to these international meetings and people looking at you and saying and asking you, is Rick here? Have you seen him? Everybody internationally really wanted to meet with Rick. He's well recognized throughout the world. Rick led interdisciplinary research before its time. He's well known in nuclear medicine, engineering, even geography, which was really outstanding. He has an outstanding rheumatology division. He's led the development of 3 chairs, I believe. So I'd want Nader and Alf and the rheumatologist in the group to stand up and be recognized for this wonderful award. So for people who don't know the rheumatology division, and congratulations to you as well. Also like to recognize both Dr. George Ioannidis and Dr. Courtney Kennedy, the 2 PhDs in the group. Do you want to stand up? Who are part of the Department of Medicine. And Rick really always recognizes what a true mentor is it's a team effort. And probably some of the best experiences as a mentee has been getting to know his family. Karen Adachi worked at his office. I had the pleasure of working with both Marcy, Aaron, and Chris, his children. I haven't worked with your grandchildren yet, but there's still time. And being at Mac, what makes McMaster such a wonderful place is having mentors like Rick. And I don't know how many people in the room know that the graduating class at McMaster, Rick had apparently, Alf mentioned, Marcy in his little backpack when he went to get his graduation award at McMaster. And that is the class that includes Alf, Barry, Rick, and Ralph Myers. So what a class that was for McMaster, pretty stellar. So congratulations, Rick, and thank you for being my mentor.
Thank you very much, Alex. It's really, really a pleasure to be here tonight to be able to accept this award. It really does give me an honor. It gives me great pleasure to accept this Jack Hirsch Award. For those of you who really don't know, Jack was the one that brought me on to faculty. He was my boss. He was the chief of medicine at that time. And, you know, I think he saw some promise in a young person who really didn't have much, if anything, in the way of research training. He spent a lot of time mentoring me. He spent a lot of time making sure that I would be successful in whatever I tried to do. And he gave me some advice, and guess what? I was smart enough to follow that advice. This from somebody who had become a leading international researcher. So he gave me 4 things to think about. First, he said to me, dream big. Don't settle for being just a good physician. You're already a good physician. If you weren't, I wouldn't have hired you. Become a great physician and researcher, not just in Hamilton, not just in Ontario, not just in Canada. Strive to be the best that you can. Strive to be the best in the world. Well, Jack, I took your advice to heart, and I worked really very hard. And now, yes, I am known both nationally and internationally for the work that I have done in osteoporosis. The second bit of advice that you gave to me was to take advantage of the world-class epidemiologists that we have here in Hamilton. I remember you saying that, you know, your career really took off when you started collaborating with them. And I took that advice. And, you know, in the early years of my career, I had the good fortune of working with people like Charlie Goldsmith and Michael Gent. And with them, I was able to design my first randomized double-blind placebo-controlled trials. More recently, I've had the opportunity to work with Lahana Tabani. And I've been blessed with supervising some truly, truly exceptional graduate students, and have led to a plethora of important publications, many of them utilizing the large epidemiologic databases that I've had the good fortune to help design and to help fund. I want to tell you, for those of you who are young researchers, good ideas come not from necessarily meeting in big halls, but sometimes it can even occur around a pool. I remember the major study that we designed. There were 5 of us sitting around the pool, shooting the breeze, and from that came the idea of starting the Canadian Multicenter Osteoporosis Study. That study has gone on for 20 years, has been funded by CIHR, and we have had, I think it's close to 150 publications from that work. Jack told me to collaborate. He said, perhaps, he told me that it shouldn't just be with people you know. It shouldn't just be within the rheumatology department, because you need to come up with different ideas. If you want to answer a question, get the experts in the field, not just in your own field. From this, new and different ideas will emerge to solve the questions that are being asked. These solutions may have great risk, but with great risk comes great reward. As a result of the collaboration with a dear friend who's now passed, Colin Weber, I've had the opportunity of working with nuclear physicists and engineers at McMaster. And with that came a better understanding of bone structure and strength. With this, we've been able to develop software that looks at bone, not just bone density, but at bone quality through measuring bone structure. This has helped us to understand where our therapies work and what they do to cortical and trabecular bone structure. This has led to discoveries not only in our osteoporosis work, but in helping us to understand osteoarthritis and the pathophysiology of degenerative joint disease. In addition to bone parameters, we've developed software to measure cartilage thickness and volume and both intra and intermuscular fat. Andy Wong, a former student, has taken this work and has received a couple of major CIHR grants that are being utilized today to help us better understand osteoarthritis. Our work in rheumatoid arthritis as well is truly novel. I recall having one of my PhD students at the time work on measuring erosion size in patients with rheumatoid arthritis, not using a 4T or an 8T or whatever T magnets there are. We were using a small bore 1T peripheral MRI unit. At the time, we had one of the leading musculoskeletal radiologists come to our place and give us a talk. And at that time, I introduced Patrick to him, and we told him what we were trying to do. And that world-renowned radiologist said, well, Rick, that's impossible. My graduate student turned to me and he said to me, you've asked a lot of me, Rick. So now you want me to do the impossible, is it? And, to his credit, to Patrick's credit, he did, in fact, develop software that could measure erosion size. And it could measure it well before it could ever be seen on X-rays. Indeed, with some of this, we're able to show that you can reverse the damage that's done by rheumatoid arthritis, something that's never really been shown or published. Some of our most recent work in osteoporosis has the potential to revolutionize the way we identify those who are at greatest risk for fracture. For the rheumatologist, for the person who's interested in osteoporosis, identifying those who are at greatest risk is really very important. The gold standard is something we call FRAX, and this was developed by our colleagues in the UK. FRAX utilizes common risk factors like age, BMI, smoking, alcohol use, and prednisone use, plus bone mineral density. FRAX will identify about 30% of those who will go on to have a hip fracture. The work that we've been doing with Dr. Cheryl Quenville in the Department of Engineering has developed a tool that will identify 70% of those who will go on to develop a hip fracture. This is going to be truly revolutionary in the field of osteoporosis. I've had the good fortune of collaborating with the School of Rehabilitation Science. I participated in the benefits of exercise in osteoporosis and osteoarthritis. I've had the very good fortune of having a very, very fine rheumatology group. Folks like Bill Benson, like Alf, more recently Nader, have been really helpful in my trials in looking at glucocorticoid-induced osteoporosis, an area which I really truly am considered a world expert. I want to thank my colleagues in rheumatology for making time covering for me when I was busy traveling or doing my research. Jack also told me to mentor good people, and they will return your guidance by making your work fun and productive. I mentored the likes of Alex, as she's pointed out. Alex really has surpassed me in my influence in osteoporosis. She's developed the first really good comprehensive guidelines in osteoporosis, in postmenopausal osteoporosis in particular, and work that she has done along with her team, along with George, along with Courtney. They've developed something called the fracture risk scale, something that probably most of you haven't heard about. But in long-term care, the biggest problem that we have today is identifying those who are going to have a fracture. And she doesn't talk about 10-year fracture risks. She's looking at the risk of fracturing over 1 year, not 10 years, over 1 year. And with this, we're going to be able to identify those patients who end up having a hip fracture and coming into hospital and suffering immensely. Alex has really been responsible for that. George, as Alex has said, has been somebody who we've mentored a lot. He was a PhD student in the HRM program. He's now our epidemiologist and biostatistician, and he is the associate scientific director at JERIS. Courtney's been phenomenal. She has been doing some of the original work with frailty and has developed the frailty index, and hopefully we'll see her apt out for use. Arthur Lau, taken much of the clinical work and teaching that I used to do in metabolic bone disease. Others, such as Dr. Andy Wong, who's now at the University of Toronto, heads up our CIHR-funded AMBER study. He is looking at osteoarthritis. Dr. Kathy Craven. Kathy is nationally recognized now for her work with those with spinal cord injury. And Dr. Laura Gian Gregorio is internationally known because of her work in exercise physiology and osteoporosis. So Jack, I want to thank you very much for having the faith and putting in the time to mentor me, to help me become a successful clinician scientist. And I can't end there. I would like to thank my wife, Karen. She's been my support throughout the years. Ever since I was a resident, she's helped me in my academic pursuits. I recall having been given the opportunity to write a chapter on Sjogren's syndrome by Watson Buchanan. This was as a resident. It was the first book chapter that I'd ever written. Many of you won't remember, but I came here over 35 years ago. This was at a time when there really weren't all that many computers around. The only thing that we really had, you won't remember the fact that, when you had to do a Medline search, you had to actually go to the stacks, you had to look up Index Medicus, then you had to go find the paper, and then you had to download it and photocopy it. My wife helped me with all of that. And then, because we were but mere residents, and we really weren't making much in the way of money. I think the first year I was making about $10,000 a year. And we couldn't afford a typewriter, okay? And so what we would do with our 2- and 3-year-old daughters, we would go down to the old 2F clinic, and there were typewriters. And our kids would roll around and play, and that was where the occupational therapy department was. And Karen and I would be working away, typing away page after page after page. And wouldn't you know it, there'd always be a time when there was a reference that you'd forgotten. And so you'd have to retype the page. I think it took us close to a month to finish that publication. And again, it was because of her patience with me, and because of all the time that she put into being a support for me that I think, I've had the opportunity to become an academic success. So I want to thank my wife, Karen, and I want to thank you for putting up with me, listening to me as I wane on. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick, and thanks to all the other award winners and everybody else who's supported the department through the last 18 months. It's been great to see people. We're not rushing you out. You can stay and gossip for a while if you wish, but I'll draw the events to a close. I'd like to thank our speakers, our award winners, and everyone else who's contributed to the success of the Department of Medicine over the last 18 months. And thank you all for coming out for dinner.